Before we start this video, subscribe to my channel, give a like, and click the bell for more updates. Hi everyone, today I'm going to be reading a book called The Adventures of Captain Underpants full color. I know it's a bit late that I'm reading this, but I'm reading it anyway. Let's begin. Chapter 1, George and Harold. Meet George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the one on the left, on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. Flower shop, pick your own roses. George and Harold were best friends. They had a lot in common. They lived right next door to each other, and they were both in the same 4th grade class at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School. George and Harold were usually responsible kids. Whenever anything bad happened, George and Harold were usually responsible. Flower shop, pick our noses. But don't get the wrong idea about these two. George and Harold were actually very nice boys. No matter what everybody else thought, they were good, sweet, and lovable. Well, okay, maybe they weren't so sweet and lovable, but they were good nonetheless. It's just that George and Harold each had a silly streak a mile long. Usually, that silly streak was hard to control. Sometimes it got them into trouble, and once it got them into big trouble. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2. Treehouse Comet Inc. After a hard day of cracking jokes, pulling pranks, and causing mayhem at school, George and Harold liked to rush to the old treehouse in George's backyard. Inside the tree house were 2 big old fluffy chairs, a table, a cupboard crammed with junk food, and padlocked crate filled with pencils, pens, and stacks of paper. Now, George and Harold loved to draw, and George loved to make up stories. And together, the 2 boys spent hours and hours writing and drawing their very own comic books. Over the years, they had created hundreds of their own comic books, starring dozens of their own superheroes. First, there was Dogman, then came Timmy the Talking Toilet, then, who could I forget, the amazing Cow Lady, but the all-time greatest superhero they ever made up had to be the amazing Captain Underpants. George came up with the idea most superheroes look like they're flying around in underwear. Well, actually, this guy's flying around in his underwear. The 2 boys laughed and laughed. Yeah, said George, he could fight with wedgie power. So George and Harold spent entire afternoons writing and drawing the comic adventures of Captain Underpants. He was the coolest superhero ever. Luckily for the boys, the secretary at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School was much too busy to keep an eye on the copy machine. So whenever they got a chance, George and Harold would sneak into the office, ran off of several hundred copies of their latest Captain Underpants adventure. After school, they sold their homemade comics on the playground for 50 cents each. That means if they sold if they said hundreds, that means $50 or something. If they sold it for $1, that would be like $100. But they said several hundred. It could be like 200, 300, 400, anything, but not 1,000. Okay, this is the book. The Really Cool Adventures of Captain Underpants, written by George Beard, drawn by Harold Hutchins. It was a time of darkness and despair for planet Earth. Bad guys had taken over the streets, and all the superheroes in the world were too old to fight evil. Hey! Ha! Then came along a new, improved, extra strength superhero. Tra-la-la! Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's an egg salad sandwich. No way, I'm Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants was faster than a speeding waistband. Zoom! More powerful than boxer shorts, and able to leap tall buildings without getting a wedgie. Tra-la-la! Night and day, Captain Underpants watched over the city, fighting for truth, justice, and all that is pre-shrunk and cottony. Meanwhile, at a nearby elementary school, turn the page, it was a stinky taco surprise day at the cafeteria. Yuck! Everybody hated it so much they all threw it away. Soon the cafeteria food came to life. I am an indebted old hunk. The monster ran around eating the school and everything in sight. Munch. Help the indebted hunk to stay up 15 folding chairs. And the gym teacher Oh no, not folding chairs. This looks like a job for tra-la-la, Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants shot lots of underwear in the monster, but it didn't do any good. Zip, munch, munch. So Captain Underpants took off running. The indictable hunk chased him. Help, grr. He chased him and chased him. And finally, indictable hunk got tired and thirsty to chase Captain Underpants. How about a nice drink of water? So the monster took a long drink from the shiny white bowl. Then suddenly, flush! Hooray for Captain Underpants! So the inimitable hunk got flushed away, and he was never heard from again. Tra-la-la, the end. Don't miss our next exciting adventure, Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilets, coming soon to a playground near you. Chapter 4. Meet old Mr. Krupp. You see that old guy looking out the window up there? That's Mr. Krupp, the principal. Now, Mr. Krupp was the meanest, sourest old principal in the whole history of Jerome Horowitz Elementary School. He hated laughter and singing. He hated the sounds of children playing at recess. In fact, he hated children altogether. And guess which two children Mr. Krupp hated most of all? If you guessed George and Harold, you're right. Mr. Krupp hated George and Harold. He hated their pranks and their wisecracks. He hated all their silly attitudes and their constant giggling. And he especially hated those awful Captain Underpants comic books. And I'm going to it says Neil here. I am going to get those boys one day, Mr. Krupp vowed. One day. Very, very soon. Chapter 5. One day, very, very soon. Remember when I said George and Harold's silly streak got them into big trouble once? Well, this is the story of how that happened. And this is some huge prank. And how some huge pranks and a little blackmail turned their principal into the coolest superhero of all time. Blackmailing. So for those of you who do not know what blackmailing means like telling somebody to do this or that, or else they're going to show something of theirs to somebody else. It was the day of the big football game between Horowitz knuckleheads and the Stunable stinkbugs. The bleachers were filled with fans. The cheerleaders ran onto the field and shook their pom-poms over their heads. And a fine black dust drifted out of their pom-poms and settled all around them. "Give me a K!" the cheerleaders shouted. "K!" repeated the fans. "Give me an N!" shouted the cheerleaders. "N!" repeated the fans. "Give me achoo!" sneezed the cheerleaders. Achoo! repeated the fans. The cheerleaders sneezed and sneezed some more. They couldn't stop sneezing. "Hey!" shouted a fan in the bleacher. "Somebody sprinkled black pepper into the cheerleader pom-poms." "Oh, it was a prank by George and Harold." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. The cheerleaders stumbled off the field, sneezing and dripping with mucus as the marching band members took their places. But when the band began to play, steady streams of bubbles began blowing out of their instruments. Bubbles were everywhere. Another prank. No, look at how far that football went that he just kicked. He literally kicked the football and it went all the way up to the sky. Up and down the field, and the marching band slipped and slid everywhere, leaving behind a track of wet, bubbly foam. "Hey!" shouted a fan in the bleachers. "Somebody poured bubble bath into the marching band's instrument." "I wonder who did that?" asked another fan. "Achoo! Achoo! Football! Itchy!" But the missing ball didn't make any difference because at that moment, the knuckleheads were rolling around in a field, scratching and itching like crazy. "Hey!" shouted the coach. "Somebody replace our deep-heating music rub lotion with Mr. Prankster extra scratchy itching cream." We wonder who did it," shouted the fans in the bleacher. The whole afternoon went much on the same way, people shouting everything from "Hey, somebody put on sea monkeys in the lemonade," to "Hey, somebody glued all the bathroom doors shut." Before long, most of the fans in the bleachers had gone up and left, and the big game had been forfeited, and everyone in the entire school was miserable. boy, your feet smell bad. Everyone, that is, except for the two giggling boys crouching in the shadows beneath the bleachers. But what if somebody's foot gets on your heads? Oh, never mind. Those were our best pranks yet, laughed Harold. Yep, chuckled George. They'll be hard to top, that's for sure. I just hope you don't get busted for this, said Harold. Don't worry, said George. We covered our tracks really well. There's no way we'll get busted. Chapter 6, Busted. The next day in school, an announcement came over the speakers. George Beard and Harold Hutchins, please report to the Principal Krupp's office at once. Uh-oh, said Harold. I don't like the sound of that. Don't worry, said George. They can't prove anything. George and Harold had entered Principal Krupp's office and sat down on the chairs out in front of the desk. The two boys had been in his office together countless times before, but this time was different. Mr. Krupp was smiling. As long as George and Harold had known Mr. Krupp, they had never seen him smile. Mr. Krupp knew something. I didn't see you boys at the big game yesterday, said Mr. Krupp. No, said George. We weren't feeling well. Yeah, Harold stammered. Nervously, we went home. Aw, that's too bad, said Principal Krupp. You boys missed a good game. George and Harold quickly glanced at each other and gulped, and tried hard not to look guilty. Lucky for you, I have a videotape of the whole thing, said Mr. Krupp. He turned on the television in the corner and pressed the play button on the VCR. A black and white image appeared on the TV screen. It was an overhead shot of George and Harold sprinkling pepper into the cheerleaders' pom-poms, and next came a shot of George and Harold pouring liquid bubble bath into the marching band's instrument. How do you like a pre-game show? Asked Mr. Krupp with a devilish grin. George eyed the television screen in terror. He couldn't answer. Harold's eyes were glued to the floor. He couldn't look. The tape went on and on, revealing all of George and Harold's behind-the-scenes antics. By now, both boys were eyeing the floor, squirming nervously and dripping with sweat. Mr. Krupp turned off the TV. You know, he said, ever since you boys came to the school, it's been one prank after another. First you put dissected frogs in the Jell-O salad on the parent-teacher banquet. Then you made it snow in the cafeteria. Then you rigged all the intercoms so they played Weird Al Yankovic songs full blast for 6 hours straight. For 4 long years, you two have been running amok in this school, and I've never been able to prove anything until now. Mr. Krupp held the videotape in his hand. I took the liberty of installing tiny video surveillance cameras all around the school. I knew I'd catch you two in the act one day. I just didn't know how it would be so easy. Chapter 7, A Little Blackmail. Okay, I'm just going to pause this book. I'm going to make a prediction. Predictions mean thinking what is going to happen next in the story. So I'm going to think that Mr. Krupp is going to tell George and Harold what they have to do, or else the videotape is going to go around to the entire school, I'm guessing. Alright, Mr. Krupp sat back in his chair and chuckled to himself for a long, long time. Finally, George and Harold got up the courage to speak. But what are you going to do with that tape? He said. I thought you never asked, laughed Principal Krupp. I've thought long and hard about what to do with this tape, Mr. Krupp said. At first, I thought I'd send copies to your parents. The boy swallowed hard. hard and sank deeply into their chairs. Then I thought I might send a copy to the school board, Mr. Krupp continued. I could get you both expelled for this. The boys swallowed harder and sank deeper into their chairs. Finally, I came to a decision, Mr. Krupp concluded. I think the football team would be very curious to find out who was responsible for... They would be very curious to find out who was responsible for yesterday's fiasco. I think I'll send a copy to them. George and Harold leaped out of their chairs and fell to their knees. No, cried George, you can't do that. They'll kill us. Yeah, begged George, they'll kill us every day and for the rest of their lives. That's not even possible. If they kill you, they can't really kill you again unless you just repeatedly do it. But they're not even going to get back up unless they're a ghost. Mr. Krupp laughed and laughed. Please have mercy, the boys cried. We'll do anything. Anything? This always happens for the shows that I always do. They always say this and they like, anything? That always happens, said the Principal Krupp. With delight, he reached into his desk and pulled out a list of demands and tossed it out to the boys. If you don't want to be dead as long as your life, you will follow these rules exactly. George and Harold carefully looked over the list. This is the blackmail, said George. Call it what you like, Principal Krupp snapped, but if you two don't follow that list exactly, then this tape becomes property of horrid knuckleheads. Chapter 8, Crime and Punishment. Just like the new book that's releasing September 1st, if you did not know, called Grime and Punishment. It's a Dogman book. I'm definitely going to be reading it. At 6 o'clock the next morning, George and Harold dragged themselves out of bed, walked over to Krupp's house, and began washing his car. What? That's chores! Then, while Harold scrubbed the tires, George roamed around the yard, pulling up all the weeds and carb grass he could find. Afterward, they cleaned the gutters and washed all the windows on Mr. Krupp's house. Well, I think I would like washing the windows, maybe the car as well. Whatever. At school, George and Harold sat up straight, listened carefully, and spoke only when spoken to. They didn't even smile. The chapter kept pinching herself. I just don't know if this is I just know this is a dream, she said. At lunch, the two boys vacuumed Mr. Krupp's office, shined his shoes, and polished his desktop. At recess, they clipped his fingernails and ironed his tie. I hate this. It's not like he's the Roman emperor, and then that happens. No, what they should have said is when they said, but that's blackmailing, they should have said that. And then Mr. Krupp says, if that's what it calls, then yes. I would definitely laugh about that. If you're a book creator watching this video, put it in your books. I would definitely get a laugh at it. Each spare moment in the boys' daily schedule was spent catering to Mr. Krupp's every whim. After school, George and Harold mowed Mr. Krupp's lawn, tended his garden, and began painting the front of his house. At sunset, Mr. Krupp came out and handed each boy a stack of books. Gentlemen, he said, I asked your teachers to give you both extra homework. Now go home and study hard, and I'll see you back here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. We've got a busy day ahead of us. Thank you, sir, moaned the two boys. George and Harold walked home tired. Man, this was the worst day of my entire life, said George. Don't worry, said Harold. We only have to do this for 8 more years. Then we can move away to some far-off land, and they'll never find us. Maybe Antarctica. I've got a better idea, said George. The hypno ring. He took a piece of paper out of his pocket and handed it to Harold. It was an old magazine ad for this 3D hypno ring. How's this going to help us? asked Harold. All we gotta do is hypnotize Mr. Krupp, said George, and we'll make him give us the video and forget this whole mess ever happened. That's a great idea, said Harold. And the best part is we only have to wait 4 hours and 6 weeks for delivery. Oh, 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. Chapter 9, 4 to 6 weeks later. After 4 to 6 weeks of back-breaking labor, grueling homework assignments, and humiliating good behavior at school, a package arrived in George's mailbox from Lil Wise Guy Novelty Company. It was the 3D Hypno Ring. Holy cried George. It's everything I've ever hoped for. Let me see, said Harold. Don't look directly at it, warned George. You don't want to get hypnotized, don't you? Do you really think it will work? Asked Gerald. Do you really think we can make our friends control enemies, rule the world, just like the ad says? It's very hard to get here again. It better work, said George, or else we just wasted $4 whole bucks. Just $4? Just $4? That's not really worth it. It could be fake. Chapter 10, the 3D Hypno Ring. The next morning, George and Harold didn't arrive early at Mr. Krupp's house to wash his car and reshingle his roof. In fact, they weren't even a little late getting to school. When they finally showed up, Mr. Krupp was standing out in the front door waiting for them. And boy, was he mad. Mr. Krupp escorted the boys into his office and slammed the door. All right, where were you two this morning? He growled. We wanted to come over to your house, said George, but we were busy trying to find out the secret of this ring. What ring? Snapped Mr. My mouth is very dry. George held up his hand and showed the ring to Mr. Krupp. It's one of those weird patterns on it, said George. If you stare at it long enough, a picture appears. Well, hold it still, snarled Mr. Krupp. I can't see the darn thing. I have to move it back and forth, said George, or else it won't work. Mr. Krupp's eyes followed the ring back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You have to stare deeper into the ring, said Harold. Deeper, 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 deeper. You are getting sleepy, said George. Very sleepy. Mr. Krupp's eyelids began to droop. I'm so sleepy, he mumbled. After a few minutes, Mr. Krupp's eyes were closed tight and began to snore. You're under our spell, said George. When I snap my fingers, you will obey my every command. I will obey, mumbled Mr. Krupp. All right, said George. Have you still got the videotape of me and Harold? Yes, mumbled Mr. Krupp. I'll hand it over. Bob, George instructed. Mr. Krupp unlocked a large file cabinet and opened the bottom drawer. He reached in one of his hands and handed George the videotape. George stuffed it into his backpack. Harold took a different video out of his backpack and put it into the filing cabinet. What's on the video? Asked George. It's one of my little sister's old Boomer the Purple Dragon sing-along videos. Nice touch, said George. All right, said George. You still got that videotape of me and Harold? Yes, mumbled Mr. Krupp. Well, hand it over, Bob, George instructed. Mr. Krupp unlocked a large filing cabinet, reached in, and handed George the videotape. Harold took a different video out of his backpack. And put it into the file cabinet. What's that video? Asked George. It's one of my old sisters' Boomer the Purple Dragon sing-along videos. Nice touch, said George. Chapter 11. Fun with the hypnosis. When Harold bent down to close the file cabinet, he took a quick look inside. Whoa, he cried. Look at all the stuff in here. The file cabinet was filled with everything Mr. Krupp had taken away from the boys over the years. There were slingshots, whoopee cushions. Yeah, you might be noticing that I have pink cheek. Actually, just cut that I'm saying it. Whoopee cushions, skateboards, fake doggy doo-doo. You name it, it was in there. "Look!" cried George. "A big stack of Captain Underpants comics." "He has got every issue," said Harold. For hours the two boys sat on the floor laughing and reading their comics. Finally George looked up at the clock. "Yikes," he says. "It's almost lunchtime. We'd better clean up this mess and get to class." The boys looked at their principal, who had been standing behind them in the trance all morning. "Gee, I almost forgot about Mr. Krupp," said Harold. "What should we do with him?" "Do you want to have some fun?" asked George. "Why not?" said Harold. "I haven't had any fun in 4 to 6 weeks." "Cool," said George. He walked up to Mr. Krupp and snapped his fingers. "Snap, you are a chicken." Suddenly Mr. Krupp leaped into his desk and flapped his arms. "Cluck, cluck, cluck, cluck," he cried, kicking his papers off the desk behind him and peeking at his pen and pencil set. George and Harold howled with laughter. "Ow! Let me try," said Harold. You are a monkey." "You gotta snap your fingers," said George. "Oh yeah," said Harold. "Snap, you are a monkey." Suddenly Mr. Krupp sprang off his desk and began swinging from the floor rest into light fixtures. "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh," he shrieked, leaping from one side of the room to the other. George and Harold laughed so hard they almost cried. My turn," said George. "Let's see, what should we turn him into next?" "I know," Harold said, holding up a Captain Underpants comic. "Let's turn him into Captain Underpants." "Good idea," said George. "Snap, you are now the greatest superhero of all time, the amazing Captain Underpants." Mr. Krupp tore down his red curtain from the office window and tied it around his neck. Then he took off his shoes, socks, shirts, and pants. "This is awful topi." And his awful topi. "Tra-la-la," he sang. Mr. Krupp stood before them looking quite triumphant, with the cape blowing in the breeze of the open window. George and Harold were dumbfounded. "You know," said George, "he kind of looks like Captain Underpants." "Yeah," Harold replied. After a short silence, the two boys looked at each other and burst into laughter. George and Harold had never laughed so hard in their lives. Tears ran down their faces as they rolled about the floor, shrieking in hysterics. After a while, George pulled himself up from the floor for another look. "Hey," George cried, "where'd he go?" Chapter 12, Out the Window. George and Harold dashed through to the window and looked out. There, running across the parking lot, was a pudgy old guy in his underwear and a red cape flowing behind him. Tra-la-la! "Mr. Krupp, come back!" shouted Harold. "He won't answer to that," said George. "He thinks he's Captain Underpants now." "Oh no," said Harold. "He's probably running off to fight crime." "He's probably running off to fight crime," said George. "Oh no," said Harold. "And we gotta stop him," said George. "Oh no," cried Harold. "No way! Look," said George. "He could get killed out there." Harold was unmoved. "Or worse," said George. "We could get into big trouble." "You're right," said Harold. "We gotta go after him." The two boys opened the bottom file cabinet drawer and took out their slingshot and skateboards. "Do you think we should bring anything else?" asked Harold. "Yeah," said George. "Let's bring the fake doggy doo-doo." "Good thinking," said Harold. "You just never know when fake doggy doo-doo is going to come in handy." Oh my, two kids are literally going to just jump out the window and slide down the pole while kids are in the class. Two of them are raising their hands and everybody is just staring like that. Okay, I can stop. Harold stuffed Mr. Krupp's clothes, shoes, and topi into his backpack. Then together the two boys leaped out of the window, slid down the flagpole, and took off on their skateboards after the amazing Captain Underpants. Maybe one of the children who was raising their hand was saying, I see George and Harold jumping out of a window and going through a flagpole and riding on their skateboards. That would be weird. Chapter 13, Bank Robbers. George and Harold rode their skateboards all over town looking for Captain Underpants. I can't find him anywhere, said Harold. You think a guy like him would be easy to spot? Said George. Then the boys turned a corner, and there he was. Captain Underpants was standing in front of a bank, looking quite heroic. Mr. Crop, cried Harold. Shh, said George. Don't call him that. Oh, yeah, call him Captain Underpants. Oh, yeah, said Harold. And don't forget to snap your fingers, said George. Right, said Harold. Ring, which is the alarm. But before he got a chance, the bank doors flew wide open and stepped out two robbers. The robbers took one look at Captain Underpants and stopped dead on their tracks. Surrender, said Captain Underpants, or I'll resort the wedgie power. Oh no, whispered George and Harold. Nobody moved about 10 seconds. Finally, the robbers looked at each other and burst out in laughing. They dropped their loot and fell on the sidewalk in hysterics. Almost immediately, the cops showed up and arrested the crooks. Let that be a lesson to you, cried Captain Underpants. Never underestimate the power of underwear. The police chief, looking quite angry, marched over to Captain Underpants. And just who the heck are you supposed to be? The police chief demanded. Why, I'm Captain Underpants, the world's greatest superhero, said Captain Underpants. I fight for truth, justice, and all that is pre-shrunk and cottony. Oh, yeah, shouted the police chief. Cuff him, boys. One of the cops took out his handcuffs and grabbed Captain Underpants by the arm. Zoom! Uh-oh, cried George. We gotta roll. The two boys zoomed into the crowd, weaving out in and out of the cops and bystanders. Harold skated up to Captain Underpants and knocked the superhero off his feet. George caught him, and the boys skated away with Captain Underpants and on their shoulders. Stop, cried the cops. But it was too late. George, Harold, and Captain Underpants were gone. Chapter 14, The Big Bang. After their quick escape, George, Harold, and Captain Underpants stopped on a deserted street corner and to catch their breath. Okay, said George, let's dehypnotize him quick before something else happens. Kaboom! A huge explosion came from one of the rare crystal shops across the street. Heavy smoke poured out of the building. Suddenly, two robots with one stolen crystal emerged from the smoke and jumped into an old truck. Did I just see two robots get into a truck? Said Harold. You know, said George, up until now, this story was almost believable. Well, believable or not, said Harold, we're not getting involved. I repeat, we're not getting involved. Just then, Captain Underpants leaped from the street corner and dashed in front of the truck. Stop in the name of underwear, he cried. Uh-oh, said George, I think we're involved. The two robots started up the truck and swerved around Captain Underpants. Unfortunately, the truck brushed up against his red cape and caught it with the mighty jerk. Captain Underpants flipped backward, and the truck pulled him as long as it drove away. Grab him! cried George. The two boys skateboarded with all their might toward the speeding trucks and grabbed Captain Underpants by the ankles. Help! they cried. Help! as the truck pulled them through the city streets. Mommy, said a little boy sitting on the bench. I just saw two robots driving a truck with a guy in his underwear hanging to the back of a red cape, pulling two boys on a skateboard behind his feet. How do you expect me to believe such a ridiculous story? Asked his mother. And then what the mother is reading is Tabloid Times. Bigfoot gives birth to a 200-pound UFO baby. Screech! Crash! Suddenly, the truck came to a screeching halt in front of an old abandoned warehouse. Suddenly, the sudden stop made Captain Underpants flip over the roof truck and crash through the front door of the building. Well, 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 said a strange voice from inside the warehouse. It looks like we have a visitor. Chapter 15, Dr. Diaper. George and Harold hid behind the truck until the coast was clear. Then they sneaked up to a hole in the door and peeked inside. Captain Underpants was all tied up with two robots standing guard, and there was a strange little man wearing a diaper was laughing mechanically. I'm Dr. Evil Diaper, this strange old man told Captain Underpants, and you will be the first to witness my takeover of the world. Dr. Diaper placed the stolen crystal into a large machine called the Lasermatic 2000. The machine started to light up and make loud noises. Heavy gears began shifting and spinning. The laser beam from the crystal shot up straight from the hole in the roof. In exactly 20 minutes, this laser would beam up to the moon and send huge chunks of it crashing down upon every major city in the world. But wouldn't that mean you too? I'm not reading that from the book. I'm just making. But wouldn't that mean it will hit your city and including you too? Okay. Laughed Dr. Diaper. Then I will rise from the rumble and take over the planet. How are you going to take over the planet if almost everybody's dead? By all the chunks. How are you going to take over the world? How? It's not like the robots are going to give birth to robot babies. The only one that can help us now, said George. Only one thing that could help us now, said George. What? Asked Harold. Rubber doggy doo-doo, said George. Harold took a fake doggy doo-doo and slingshot it from George's backpack and handed them to him. Be careful, said Harold. The fate of the entire planet is in your hands. Harold took the fake doggy doo-doo and a slingshot from George's backpack and handed them to him. Be careful, said Harold. The fate of the entire planet is in your hands. With careful and precise aim, George shot the rubber doo-doo through the air across the room, and it landed plop right at the feet of Dr. Diaper. Yes, whispered George and Harold. Plop. Dr. Diaper looked down at the doo-doo between his feet and turned bright red. Oh dear me, he cried. I'm dreadfully embarrassed. Please excuse me, he explained. He began to waddle toward the restroom. This has never happened to me. He actually thinks he pooped. That's very weird, if you ask me. This has never happened to me before, I assure you, he said. I guess with all the excitement, I just, oh dear. While Dr. Diaper was changing off himself, George and Harold sneaked into the old warehouse. Immediately, the robots detected the boys and began marching toward them. Destroy the intruders, said the robots. Destroy the intruders. George and Harold screamed and ran back to the back of the warehouse. Luckily, George found 2 old boards and gave one of them to Harold. "We're not going to have a resort to incredibly graphic violence, are we?" asked Harold. "I sure hope not," said George. Chapter 16, the incredibly graphic violence chapter in Flippy-Rama. Warning, the following chapter contains graphic scenes of showing 2 boys beating the tar out of a couple of robots. If you have high blood pressure, or if you faint at the sight of motor oil, we strongly urge you to take better care of yourself and stop being such a baby. Introducing Flippy-Rama. You may pause the video if you want to read all this. Alright. Flippy-Rama 1. Okay. Chapter 17, The Escape. After defeating the robots, George and Harold united Captain Underpants. "Come on," cried Harold. "Let's get out of here." "Wait," said Captain Underpants. "We have to save the world first." So George and Harold and Captain Underpants frantically looked all over the Lasermatic 2000, searching for a way to shut it down and stop the inevitable disaster. Said Harold, "I think this is not the lever we want." He pulled the self-destruct lever with all his might. Suddenly, the Lasermatic 2000 began to sputter and shake. The huge laser beam turned off, and pieces of the machine began flying off in all directions. "It's gonna blow!" cried Harold. "Run for your lives!" "Not so fast!" screamed Dr. Diaper, who appeared out of nowhere. "You demolished my robot, you destroyed my Lasermatic 2000, and you ruined one of my chances to take over the world. But you won't live to tell the tale." Dr. Diaper pulled out his Diapermatic 2000 ray gun. No, it's just every time I look at Dr. Diaper, it's like his head is Professor Poopy Pants, but his body is basically Captain Underpants. So he is part evil, part Captain Underpants. Weird. And pointed it at George, Harold, and Captain Underpants. Captain Underpants quickly stretched a pair of underwear and shot it at Dr. Diaper. The underwear landed right on the doctor's evil head. On the evil doctor's head. "Help!" cried Dr. Diaper. I can't see! Snap. George and Harold ran out of the warehouse as fast as they could. "Great shot, Captain Underpants," cried Harold. "There's just one thing I don't understand," said George. "Where did you get a pair of extra underwear?" "What extra pair?" said Captain Underpants. "Oh, that was his underwear." "Well, never mind," cried George. "Let's just get out of here before that Lasermatic thing kaboom! Plodes." The Lasermatic blew up, tearing apart the old warehouse, sending flaming shards of red-hot metal in every direction. Fire from the skies all around our heroes, and the earth began to crumble beneath their feet. "Oh no!" cried Harold. "We're doomed!" Chapter 18. To make a long short story short, they got away. Chapter 19. Back to school. George, Harold, and Captain Underpants made a quick stop outside the police station. They tied up Dr. Diaper. They tied Dr. Diaper to a lamppost and attached a note to him. "There," said Captain Underpants. That ought to explain everything. It says, "Arrest me." Back in 15 minutes. Please don't commit any crimes till we return. Thank you. Oh, wait. Then George and Harold led Captain Underpants back to Jerome Horwitz Elementary School. "Why are we going here?" asked Captain Underpants. "Well," said George, "you have to do some undercover work here." "Yeah," said George, reaching into this backpack. "Put all these clothes on and make it snappy." "Don't forget your hair," said George. Captain Underpants quickly got dressed in behind some bushes. "Well, how do I look?" he asked. "Pretty good," said George. "Now try to look really mad." Captain Underpants made the nastiest face he could. "You know," said Harold, "he kind of looks like Mr. Krupp." Harold, whispered George, "he is Mr. Krupp." "Oh, yeah," said George, "I almost forgot." Before long, they were back inside Mr. Krupp's office. "Okay, Captain Underpants," said George, "you are now Mr. Krupp. Snap your fingers," whispered. "Oh, yeah," said George. "Snap your fingers. You are now Mr. Krupp." "Who's Mr. Krupp?" asked Captain Underpants. "Oh, no," cried Harold. "It's not working." The boys tried it again and again to de-hypnotize Captain Underpants, but nothing seemed to work. Said Harold. "Let me see the instruction manual for that ring." George checked his pants pocket and, said George, "I think I lost it." "You what?" cried Harold. The two boys searched frantically through the office, but the 3D hypno ring instruction manual was never found. "Never mind," said George. "I have an idea." He removed the flowers from a large vase around in the corner, then poured out all the water over Captain Underpants' head. "What did you do that for?" cried Harold. I saw this in the cartoon once," said George, "so it's gotta work." After a few minutes, Crump slowly came to. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "Why am I all wet?" George and Harold had never been so glad to see Mr. Crump in all of their lives. "I am so happy I could cry," said Harold. "Well, you're going to cry when I give that videotape to the football team," shouted Mr. Crump. "I've had it with you." Principal Crump took the videotape out of his file cabinet. "You boys are dead meat," he sneered. He stormed out of the office with the video and headed toward the gym. George and Harold smiled. "Wait till the football team sees that video," said Harold. "Yeah," said George. "I hope they like the singing purple dragon." "Hey," said George, "I found the hypno ring instruction manual. It was in my shirt pocket. Not my pants pocket." "Well, throw it away," said Harold. "We'll never need to see it again." Said Harold. "We'll never need it again." I sure hope not." Chapter 20. The end? La 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 la, we love Boomer la la. Things at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School were never quite the same after all. That fateful day, the football team enjoyed Mr. Krupp's video so much that they changed their name from the Knuckleheads to the Purple Dragon. Sing along, friends. The name change didn't go too well with the fans. But hey, who's gonna argue with a bunch of linebackers? George and Harold went back to their old ways. They had to keep an eye out on Mr. Krupp, though. Snap, 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 because for some strange reason, every time you heard the sound of fingers snapping, snap, Principal Krupp turned back into you know who. "Oh no," cried Harold. "Here we go again," said George. "Tra-la-la!" Yeah, I'm not really gonna read this, but you may pause the video and read this if you like. This one too. This one. This one. This one. This one. This one. Okay, now here are some fun facts. Here are all the books. Wait, I think this one's an updated book. I didn't actually notice that. Because it has Dog and Grind Punishment, which is the next book that is coming out, which is going to be released. You can pause the video and read this one too. So I hope So I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and give a thumbs up. I will see you in our next video. Bye!